Greetings from the city of brotherly love. I am Fernando Mendez, host of the Roundtable. We invite you to listen to our discussion of the themes of the day when we bring you regional, national, and international news. Señores oyentes de Usa la Radio, estamos aquí de nuevo con su programa La Mesa Redonda de Roundtable. Desde el corazón de la ciudad del amor fraternal les habla Fernando Méndez, Dani Ramos controlando la máquina digital. Y bueno, hay temas locales, nacionales, internacionales, noticias sobre elecciones en Virginia, en Nueva Jersey, pues en el momento de este programa, de hacer este programa, no se ha decidido el ganador de las elecciones para gobernador en Nueva Jersey. Pero Murphy se espera que gane, pero está todavía en la balanza el asunto. Pero hay noticias a través del estado. Republican Kevin Robson ganó para la Corte Suprema. Kevin Brunson won the race for a vacant state Supreme Court seat over Democrat Maria McLachlan, the Wilkes-Barre Times leader reports. State Rep Ed Gainey won in Pittsburgh for mayor. So that's a big change for that city, one of the largest cities in Pennsylvania. And in Philadelphia, DA Larry Krasner won easily re-election of Republican challenger Chuck Peruto. That's according to WHYY. Democrat J. William Reynolds won over Republican John Kachmar to win the Bethlehem mayoral race. According to the Allentown Morning Call, City Council President and Democratic nominee Wanda Williams won the Harrisburg mayoral race despite incumbent Democratic Mayor Eric Papenfuse's write-in campaign. Republican Glenn Eckhart beat incumbent Democratic Phillips Armstrong in the race for Lehigh County executive. So those are news from Pennsylvania. Our friend Judge Levin in Philadelphia won for the Court of Common Pleas. Craig Levin was interviewed on this program a while ago, so we're hoping to have him back to talk about the race and plans for the future. State employee union leaders praise Governor Tom Wolf's offer to extra paid sick leave as a COVID-19 vaccination incentive. Well, it's hard to believe that at this point, with the knowledge we have about COVID and the fact that the vaccine has been so effective, the vaccines, because it's not only Moderna and Pfizer, there J&J, and there are other vaccines that have proven very effective, and now we are expecting children from 5 to 11 also to be inoculated. And those are good news because there are about 28 million children in that range, which will be good for the numbers as we fight the dire effects of COVID. So today's program is a bit about COVID, a little bit about other things that are happening. The climate accords. Remember that Donald Trump, in one of those most controversial decisions, removed the United States from the fight for improvements to the world climate. And that has been, from the start, one of the main goals of the Biden administration, from Joe Biden, to bring the U.S. back into the world arena as far as fighting COVID. It's hard to believe that at any point in our recent history we would not be interested in improving the environment, but that's what happened during the government of Donald Trump. An item that actually led Biden to say to the world leaders, "I am so sorry we elected a climate change denier." So that's what the president said. The climate summit in Glasgow kicked off with an apology from Biden for the actions of his predecessor, a lot of dire warnings, and a pledge that could bring about real change. So, from what we have heard, reports on MSNBC and public radio about how the world is finally to invest heavily in improving our climate. The world is willing to contribute billions of dollars over the next 30 years. The US and China at this point are the main polluters, the main cause of damage to the environment. But as we know, the Chinese did not participate, did not come to this meeting, COP26 in Glasgow. The Chinese are the huge presence that is not there, an absentee member of the countries that should be fighting for a better climate for the world. We have only a small window of opportunity. You might remember that on this program, we spoke with a couple of our friends, Antonieta Cadiz from Climate Power, and Jessica Ordonez from Washington, talking about the world climate, and they have been reporting about what needs to be done, where we are lacking in investment, and so on. We will bring more reports on what is occurring in this after this COP26 meeting summit in Scotland. As we know, the Trump administration did little to help the United States, to help the world regarding the imminent need to change what is happening to our climate. As I said, 30 years. According to that UN report that I mentioned with Jessica Ordonez, according to that UN report, we have a small window to deal with this crisis, which means that the world should not get warmer than 2 degrees. And that is sort of a point that Biden made at the summit. And actually the aim after the summit, the aim for all these nations that plan to invest billions of dollars, and includes places like European countries, in South America, Colombia and Brazil. These countries will invest real money in fighting the decay of our climate. So we have a small window. Decisions have to be made at this point. And so one thing we should celebrate is that we have a president in the White House who is willing to fight for a better climate for the world, and restore the U.S. to a leadership in this dire need, this time of dire need for improvement in policies and politics and investment in a better climate. So Biden acknowledged Americans who 4 or 5 years ago weren't at all sure about climate change, whether it was real, have, as they say in southern parts of my state, said Biden, seen the Lord and the incredible changes that are taking place. So he assured the world that when I talk about the American people about climate change, I tell them it's about jobs. And that's one of those initiatives that will create jobs as we go into solar power, wind power, other possibilities for the use of energy in this country. It's not too late, but it is a shame. We lament the fact that for the last 4 years during the Trump administration, there was little done to improve our environment because with their head firmly buried in the sand, the Republicans who followed Trump were not interested in anything, doing anything but the climate. In fact, they were not interested in anything except getting reelected, as we know. So in this crossing of two very important issues, national elections, what they mean, and climate, fighting for a better climate, and the damages caused by COVID-19. Well, this is all gigantic issues that have met at this point. We cross that path about the people who died from COVID. Remember that Trump said it would be gone by April of 2020, and here we are. 700,000 people, over 700,000 people have died in this country, and more people around the world. And COVID is still with us, except for one thing. There is optimism because the vaccines have proven effective. So here we are. One part of this crisis that the Biden administration has confronted with COVID, one part of that is showing positive signs. What is not so positive is what is happening in Washington, where the Republicans are determined to impede any advances brought on by the Biden administration. So, and they don't have the votes. The Democrats don't have the votes, actually. Very small margin in the House and a very small margin in the Senate. And we'll see what happens because 2022 will change the landscape one way or the other. What to do, what to think about what just happened in Virginia, where a Republican candidate beat a well-known Democratic operative that had experience during the Clinton administration, who should have won in Virginia. And we cannot even blame Trump for that loss, Democratic loss, because the winner, Mr. Youngman, did not even call Trump on the scene. He was determined to win this election without mentioning Trump, without bringing Trump, even though the feeling is that he was a supporter of Trump. And as expected, Donald Trump immediately took credit for that victory, even though he had little to do with it. And in fact, he probably caused more damage to that candidacy. In the New Jersey race, it really is more difficult to understand what is happening. Um, we we expected a Democratic candidate to win, Phil Murphy, but um, it's one of the things that's still up in the air. We have no results yet. We cannot bring that information to you. Um, and one local piece of news, Wolf is urging lawmakers to close a loophole in a bill to ban gifts to legislators, which he says could still allow for gifts from non-registered lobbyists. So I don't know, all this stuff, but giving anything to politicians, it just leads to corruption. Well, we leave you with that thought, and we're going to take a brief pause here en Usa la Radio. Les habla Fernando Mendez. Dani Ramos controla la máquina digital. Regresamos en un minuto. Greetings from the city of brotherly love. I am Fernando Mendez, host of the Roundtable. We invite you to listen to our discussion of the themes of the day when we bring you regional, national, and international news. Señores oyentes de USA la Radio, estamos aquí de nuevo con su programa La Mesa Redonda de Roundtable desde el corazón de la ciudad del amor fraternal, from the city of brotherly love. Les habla Fernando Méndez. Dani Ramos controla la máquina digital. Y hablando de cómo los regalos, la corrupción de darle dinero o regalos de cualquier tipo a los políticos para conseguir favores, pues aquí en Pensilvania, el gobernador Wolf quiere cerrar una parte de este proceso de darle regalos a los políticos. Está pidiéndole a la legislatura que cierre este loophole que llaman, esta falla de las leyes, que todavía podría permitir que le lleguen regalos a los políticos de parte de los cabilderos para influenciarlos de algún modo, ¿no? So, Wolf is urging lawmakers to close a loophole in a bill to ban gifts to legislators, which he says could still allow for gifts from non-registered lobbyists. So, I don't know. Still, anytime you can influence them by giving them gifts, by giving them money or perks, flights, it's the beginning of the road to corruption. If you can buy a politician with gifts of any kind, and then you have them in your pocket, and you can demand that they do what you ask them to do. So it's one of those. It's a slippery slope. States, U.S. Senator Bob Casey and Pat Toomey both lauded an agreement between the Biden administration and the European Union to ease a dispute over steel and aluminum tariffs. Okay, that seems like a minor thing, but remember, tariffs can be used and were used by Trump to influence decisions by leaders of countries where we export or from countries where we need to bring goods. And tariffs are a tricky thing to use because, let's say we impose tariffs on some goods we import from the European Union, they can retaliate by, in turn, imposing tariffs on goods that they import from the United States. So in the end, it doesn't benefit anyone. It just increases the cost for us, for people who buy goods and services. Former Chief of Staff to former Philadelphia Mayor Ed Rendell and former Comcast executive David L. Kern was confirmed as the U.S. ambassador to Canada. Okay, that's one of those perks of the influencers, of people who have had, who played a big role in especially in local politics. I mean, David Cohen, as far as I remember, for the last 2 decades, perhaps more, has been at the forefront of people who influenced our political decisions, serving Rendell, and then through Comcast, sort of sponsoring other politicos, talking about perks and all that. So to David Cohen, it seems like a reward for having helped Joe Biden become president. A federal judge dismissed bribery charges against Philadelphia City Councilman Bobby Heenan as his federal corruption trial stretches into its 5th week. So we don't know what's happening with this, but talking about corruption, it's endemic in this city, and there was ample proof of Bobby Heenan's corruption because of his friendship with a union. Dan Milser from Pennsylvania, Republican, said President Biden's $1.75 trillion spending bill is full of problems. So, yeah, well, we understand. Republicans are opposed right now. And this is what we think about the present situation. Just imagine that instead of Chuck Schumer and instead of Nancy Pelosi, we would have Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy in charge of Congress. Think about it. How much, for how long would they hesitate to do something to gain full control, to make sure that the vote in the House or the Senate goes their way? Think about that. For how long would they hesitate to do anything? We know Mitch McConnell would leave bodies in his wake, and Kevin McCarthy is just what is he? A bootlicker for Donald Trump. He will do whatever it takes. He has no spine. He is a consummate liar. Just listen to a report of a conversation that he had with Adam Schiffer, and where the two exchanged a very brief dialogue. And then McCarthy reported one thing, and Schiffer later complained that within minutes of that conversation, Kevin McCarthy was lying, saying something that has not happened. And when questioned about that, his response was, well, you know how it is. So we know how it is in the on that part of the political landscape where Republicans are willing to do anything, to lie about everything, to follow a failed president who destroyed their party. Keep in mind that Donald Trump lost, for the Republicans, lost the White House, lost the House, and lost the Senate and a few governorships. And because of him, 2 senators from Georgia got elected. Thank God, because that is what keeps the balance in the Senate, which we can still control with the vote of the vice president. But Again, I want you to think seriously and consider what would happen if it was in reverse. Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy in charge, which is what they were doing until Donald Trump lost. Would they hesitate? So, in view of their loss, the Democrats have experienced in Virginia that could foreshadow the outcomes of the 2022 elections. Think about what that means for Democrats. Are they willing to do something now? Because here's what happened. And this, I was thinking about this. I don't know if it's an original phrase, but I thought about this as perfection paralysis. Perfection paralysis. Because they don't have a perfect bill, because they bill that is before the House and going to the Senate, because that bill is not perfect for everybody. It doesn't take into account all the things the progressives want and all the things that more moderates, Democratic moderates want. That because that bill is not doing everything it's supposed to do about immigration, about child care, about family leave, about Medicare and Medicaid, because it's not doing all those things to perfection. They have not been able to pass it. And you cannot just blame Joe Manchin, even though he just did tremendous damage to the Biden administration by declaring his opposition while Biden is still in Europe, trying to gain consensus in Europe about climate accords and proposing investments from this nation. In the meantime, you have a high-profile senator from the Democratic Party, Joe Manchin, attacking the president. How is that? How is that helping? I mean, Joe Manchin is doing all Mitch McConnell and McCarthy and the other boobs on the Republican side have to do is sit and wait. Manchin and Sinema are doing the job for the Republicans. They don't have to worry about anything. This is a time to wake up. See what happened in Virginia, because there's no guarantee that they would have changed the landscape, the results in Virginia, New Jersey, and elsewhere. But it could have. It could have had some effect, not only here, but outside our country. The fact that Biden could go to the world and say, I have this in my pocket. I have this investment for the future of our nation and the world. Because the money that is that will be allocated with the trillions of dollars, with the 1.7 trillion, which is people think is not enough. But this money will help our country. It would have repercussions all around the world in investments on climate, on the business accords, on trade, on tariffs, on everything that affects our daily lives. Why can't the Democrats say, this is it? We are going to do it. We need to do it. They seem to be playing two different games, because I don't know if it's a valid comparison, but the Democrats seem to be playing ping pong in a nice way with very soft rackets and in a nice little ball. And the Republicans are playing hard tennis, hitting the ball hard and attacking whatever they can. And these are the things that are happening around the country, because the Democrats are frozen in place. It's perfection, paralysis. And we'll talk more about that on the other side of a brief pause here en Usa la Radio. Les habla Fernando Mendez, Dani Ramos controla la máquina digital. Regresamos en un minuto.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes. You can do it here. But I get it, you're busy, and busy people can't have prediabetes. I read that wrong. They can, okay? Just go to the site.
Menos de 1 minuto saber si está usted en riesgo de padecer prediabetes. Puede averiguarlo aquí. Visite esta página.
Señores oyentes de USA la Radio, estamos aquí de nuevo con su programa La Mesa Redonda de Roundtable. Desde el corazón de la ciudad del amor fraternal, les habla Fernando Méndez. Dani Ramos controla la máquina digital. Estamos hablando de la parálisis que sufren los demócratas en este momento. Un momento crucial. Porque ellos tienen apenas unos pocos meses para conseguir algunos objetivos, mientras tienen el poder. No hay garantía de que van a continuar en el poder en la Cámara después de las elecciones del 2022. No hay garantía de que van a continuar en la lead en el Senado. Es posible que Mitch McConnell vuelva. Es posible que Kevin McCarthy vuelva a ser el speaker después de las elecciones del 2022. En este momento parece que los demócratas están haciendo todo lo posible con esta parálisis que tienen, ¿no? Lo que he llamado en inglés perfection paralysis, la parálisis de la perfección. Porque buscando una ley perfecta que cubra todos los aspectos de los diferentes grupos de presión en el Senado y en el Congreso, los de extrema izquierda, los progresistas que quieren dinero para inmigración, para reformar el modo como se lleva a cabo las elecciones, para reformar los comicios nacionales para que no vuelva a suceder lo que sucedió anteriormente, pero que no están haciendo nada porque no pueden llegar a un acuerdo que cumpla, que llene todos los requisitos para los diferentes grupos de presión. Así que el grupo de izquierda, los progresistas, que quieren tanto, quieren de todo, quieren para la salud, para la economía, para inmigración, y los moderados, que están preocupados por que se está gastando demasiado dinero, porque se está aumentando la deuda, etcétera. Esos grupos no pueden llegar a un acuerdo. Entonces, entre tanto, los republicanos están sentados mirando el espectáculo, diciendo, mira esto. Hay una expresión en inglés, ¿no?, que dice que no, a ver si la traducción la puedo hacer, que no debe usted preocuparse de nada mientras su enemigo está tratando de dispararse contra sus pies. So, you should not worry about anything as long as your enemy is shooting himself in the foot. So that's what's happening here. Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy are looking at the landscape, and they see Nancy Pelosi struggling to get consensus among Democrats in the House. And I'm sorry, Chuck Schumer has not been effective in the Senate. And there are people there who could take the lead, perhaps. And I'm looking at Joe Manchin. He's not all wrong about what he's saying what he's opposed to, his concern about this increase in the debt. We would like him to think about this. During the 4 years of the Trump administration, the debt ceiling increased with the help of Democrats. They helped the Trump administration, and Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy, to increase the debt ceiling. They did it at least 3 times, perhaps more. And with the help of Democrats. Were they expecting the Republicans to come on board and say, oh, yeah, well, you helped us during the Trump administration, so we'll be willing to help you now? Really, good luck with that one. I don't think Mitch McConnell is interested in anything to help Democrats achieve their objectives. And again, I repeat, Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy would not hesitate for 1 minute to change the filibuster, to change any law, any regulation, any tradition, to alter it in order to achieve their objectives, which are usually objectives that are anti-democratic, racist, against the norm, against what we expect as fair play, against justice. Just think what they did to the Justice Department during the Trump administration, with Bill Barr practically serving as Trump's lawyer. That's what happened. They undermined the Justice Department. They undermined the FBI. They undermined all the institutions that we have been relying upon since this country was founded. And then, when they lost that election of November 2020, Donald Trump dedicated the last months of his administration to attempt to change the outcome, to tell us that he didn't lose, that the election was stolen from him. And remember, the whole impetus of January 6th was to say, this won't happen. You cannot make this official. The whole purpose of January 6th was to stop the certification. The only time that Mike Pence did anything to do his job responsibly. And he only did it because he had no other option. He was told that he could not do anything but help the certification. Do you think that he was scared because there was a noose outside the Capitol ready to take care of him because Trump was not happy with Pence? But Pence, remember one scene, a famous scene, you can probably still find it on YouTube. This, I guess, a cabinet meeting, and Pence is sitting to the right hand of Donald Trump. And Donald Trump takes a bottle of water and he bends down and puts it on the floor. And almost like a puppet, Mike Pence picks up his bottle and puts it on the floor. It's a famous scene that sort of symbolizes how servile, how committed, how dedicated Pence was to serving Donald Trump, to be his slave, sorry to use that word, to be his servant. And so let's not think about Pence as being a patriot in the sense that he did what he had to do. He had no option. He was told that by lawyers in the White House that you have no options here. He had called somebody, I forgot who, Dan Quayle, I think, Dan Quayle, who was Reagan's vice president. And Quayle told him that according to the Constitution and tradition and the law, he had no other option but to certify the election. Because at that point, when he was calling Dan Quayle, Pence was still trying to think of loopholes, of ways in which he could block the certification, in which he could refuse to sign onto the process and stop the count of the votes and whatever. So that's what we'll talk about the January 6th for a little bit. But that's what it was about. So, as I said, the Republicans are playing hardball. The Republicans are playing some game that I don't understand, I don't accept, but it's producing results for them. The Republicans are achieving their objectives. They are getting people elected to office. They are fighting the Democrats on every front. They are affecting how the elections will take place. They want total control of the process. And whatever they can't win, they have deprived citizens, blacks and Hispanics and Asians, from voting. So what kind of democracy is it that would allow this to happen? We're selling the world an ideal that we don't practice. There's not democracy in that sense. It's only maneuvering behind the scenes. No more. That's not different from what happens in banana republics. And speaking of banana republics, that's another theme that we will shortly deal with. Think Nicaragua and think what is happening there. So, as our president traveled to Europe to a meeting which he could have had the strength behind him of tremendous investment to guarantee the world that we are putting our money where our mouth is, that we are doing something concrete, that he has the support of the American people. Again, the Senate was engaged in paralysis perfection. Instead of taking a heuristic approach, if you don't understand the term heuristic, I don't blame you. It's not a common term. But it's an approach that achieves goals that are not the perfect goal, achieves something, let's say 70% or 80% of what you want, not everything. Where people on either side of the issue will not be completely satisfied, but that it achieves some good. So, for the sake of perfection, Democrats are not doing any good. So we'll address that topic and other topics on the other side of a brief pause here en Úsala Radio. Les habla Fernando Mendez. Dani Ramos controla la máquina digital. Regresamos en un minuto.
Once there was a boy who did the same thing again and again. One day he was told he had autism. He got help and slowly learned how to live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
¿Now? Ok, señores oyentes de Uso de la Radio, estamos aquí de nuevo con la mesa redonda. The Roundtable, les habla Fernando Mendez, Dani Ramos controla la máquina digital. Estamos hablando sobre lo que pasa en Washington, porque en este momento, remember the speaker, Tip O'Neill, at one point said, all politics is local. I think that from recent events, we have to change that to all politics are national. Because there is a momentum. Let's say, take one thing like education. Apparently, that's what changed the outcome in Virginia, education. People are now concerned about who and what is being taught to their children and who's teaching it, and what books are being used. And it's a short step from there to start banning texts that tell the truth. You know how they say that victors are the ones who write history? Well, that could be happening right now. And Republicans, if they keep winning everywhere, may change even the way our education goes. What texts can be used? How the laws are applied? What is happening in places like Texas? Okay, we're waiting for the Supreme Court to decide what is going to happen to abortion laws in Texas. But the governor of Texas has sort of enabled each individual in Texas who is opposed to abortion, to women having control of their bodies, they can be vigilantes. I mean, that's what is happening over there. And that's what that hideous governor, Abbott, has done in Texas. And with the approval of the legislature, I guess. And Ted Cruz, another idiot. Why is this man still serving? Why is Ted Cruz still in the Senate? It's a mystery. I don't even know if there's any opposition to him in Texas. Even after his Cancun trip, when all the citizens of the state were confronting a crisis brought on by the weather, by the way. What weather affecting the environment, affecting what happens to us. It certainly affected Texans in a hard way. In the meantime, he took a trip to Cancun. So that's one hideous man who should be sent home, but I don't know. It's not going to happen. And then we have the governor of Florida, who will not allow his people to wear masks, and so on. All kinds of stuff. And now Youngkin in Virginia. Youngkin wins, and it makes no sense to us that Democrats would lose a state that Biden won by 10 points recently in November of 2020. And 1 year later, my what's his name? My colleague, he's running for governor. He cannot carry the state. So it's McAuliffe has credentials. You know, he served the Clinton administration, but maybe that didn't help him. I don't know. That's a state that, again, Biden won by 10 points. So Republicans appeared on track to retake the state's House of Delegates, securing a one-seat majority. Winsome Sears is projected to win lieutenant governor, becoming the first Black woman to hold statewide office in Virginia history. But the only way that Black woman could win was being a Republican. It's like, I don't know, in Philadelphia, imagine in Philadelphia a Republican winning anything at this point. Again, one of the reasons Philadelphia has not taken the image of a thriving metropolis, modern, attracting jobs, energized by investment. I blame the Democrats. They have controlled this city for over 6 decades, since 1953, the last Republican mayor. So Republicans have no power in Philly. Republicans cannot do anything. I don't know. See, that's where the bipartisan thing comes in. That's where it's no good for one party to control anything for such a long time. In some ways, you say, well, thank God Republicans are not in control of Philadelphia, because otherwise we'll have these draconian laws, but against common sense, against democracy. Thank God. But it's not good that the Democrats have control for such a long time. So we're still waiting to see what happens with Phil Murphy. And there's a challenger, Jack Ciattarelli, a Republican, and they're in a deadlock in New Jersey. We don't know the results. By the next program, we might be able to talk about that. But Minneapolis, so something that could happen anywhere in this country. The voters rejected a referendum to abolish the police force and create a Department of Public Safety. So defund the police, that's, Democrats really don't want that. Even the most radical, well, actually some of the very radical Democrats would say, defund the police. But common sense says we need a police force to maintain law and order, so forget about that issue. But we have to address a couple of things here. What is going to happen in 2022? Democrats need to wake up, do whatever it takes. They should stop bickering among themselves. You cannot achieve the perfect legislation. You should be able to achieve some goals, to reach consensus. Stop this intramural fighting. There was George Will came to Philadelphia to speak, and he said that he's concerned that the election of 2024 will be between an 82-year-old man and a 76-year-old man, 77-year-old man. So like two old men who have had their time, who should not be anywhere on the political scene. That's what we might have in 2024. So he's worried about that. He's worried about the fact that Vice President Kamala Harris could be the Democratic candidate, doesn't have the pool, does not have what it takes to run. So who is going to run? Who can take the Democratic Party, take the lead and be the candidate for 2024. I don't know. I would make one prediction here that somewhere along the line, Joe Manchin, Senator Joe Manchin, will be a candidate. That's my prediction. So we'll see what happens to that prediction. We'll see what happens to everything that is going on right now, good and bad. And this is what our program is. We always try to address national and international issues. And one of them is the Nicaraguan government, the shame of Nicaragua, another Marxist president who refuses to leave. So follow that, because it's in the news right now. Another Fidel Castro, a mini Fidel Castro in Nicaragua. So with that, we say thank you. Les agradecemos mucho su sintonía en el día de hoy. Se despide Fernando Mendez aquí en la Mesa Redonda. Dani Ramos controló la máquina digital. Los esperamos hasta la próxima. Greetings from the city of brotherly love. I am Fernando Mendez, host of the Roundtable. We invite you to listen to our discussion of the themes of the day when we bring you regional, national, and international news.